Andy, from an energy standpoint, is the world that we live in now, is it going to be radically different in the next 5 years?
Well, I think it's fair to assume that there are going to be major sweeping changes in the relatively near future. Very difficult to predict exactly when they're going to occur or even what they'll be.
Are these going to be technology-driven changes?
Well, I think we're definitely going to see an explosion. We are already seeing and will continue to see an explosion of technology in a way that will probably change the energy supply and demand equation in a fundamental sort of way. And we can't predict exactly what that will be, but I think we need to understand and recognize that that's likely to happen as part of our planning process.
Here in Oklahoma, where natural gas is such an important part of our economy, that's almost been a double-edged sword in the past year because we've seen prices fall so low.
Well, on the one hand, it ought to actually be something that's a set of circumstances that's very strongly favorable for natural gas. And the reason I say that is that in a world in which there's at least the potential for really sweeping kinds of changes, there's a real value in we still need to have a strategy for meeting our current energy needs. That's critical. And what is most helpful is to look to energy resources that, on the one hand, we know we can tap, and on the other hand, where we tap them in small bites so that we can adjust ideally in either direction. If we need a lot more, we know how to ramp up production. If we don't need quite as much, we can adjust to that. And if you look at the various energy resources, you can't do that with a coal-fired plant. You can't do it with a nuclear plant. Those take a decade of lead time. With natural gas, we can, at least potentially, adjust our production, I think probably grow it very rapidly and increase the amount of natural gas that's furnished into the U.S. market really quite dramatically, and at times that are necessary, potentially cut down a little bit the number of new wells that are drilled. Now, what's happened over the past 12 months is a really unfortunate, but I think largely preventable situation. And to be very blunt about it, a big part of what's happened is that I don't believe that the energy industry broadly has been paying enough attention to trying to really understand energy supply and demand short term and what's that's likely to do to energy prices. I think the natural gas producers were caught by surprise to a large degree by the oversupply situation that developed last year, and they should not have been. I have a market analysis service, and I predicted, I think sometime in the spring of last year, that by last fall, prices would drop fairly dramatically. And the conditions that caused that were already really quite apparent. And unfortunately, many natural gas producers, I think, have believed generally that the energy markets, you just can't, that they're too difficult to predict, that you can't understand where natural gas prices are going. Prices were high for a while, and so what happened is that there was a huge surge in drilling, and it's really, in effect, caused a lot of the problem that's occurred of natural gas prices dropping fairly dramatically. And I do think that's a problem for everyone, not just the energy industry here in Oklahoma and elsewhere, but ultimately a bad thing from a consumer standpoint as well. So I think that kind of situation is largely preventable. Now, what happened in the last 9 months or so, which is really unfortunate, is that at the same time that the producers were already on a path where essentially they were ramping up production too rapidly, that we had an economic collapse that really no one could have predicted, and that exacerbated the situation greatly, and that's required really the most severe cutback in drilling ever, and it's caused prices to drop very low. And that part of it really couldn't have been predicted, but really most of it was foreseeable, and I'm not saying that with the benefit of hindsight. I said it in print before it happened. So I think it's critical that producers devote the resources that are necessary to really understand the natural gas market. Now, the other thing that's happening that is very helpful in terms of the ability to adjust supply and demand is that, as you're no doubt aware, there's really a huge amount of development that's occurring now in the deep shale gas formations. And that's really, to a large extent, new, and it's a new resource, and it involves developing the processes that are necessary in order to exploit that resource cost effectively. There have been dramatic improvements in that area over the course of the last year or two that has unlocked a tremendous amount of new supply. It also, what's fortuitous, is that the nature of shale formations is that you can ramp up production very rapidly the times that you need to, the times it is justified.